Videos like these are helped made possible thanks to the generous support from my viewers. If you'd like to support this channel, you can do so over on my Ko-Fi. For as little as just $1, you can help make videos like this one possible. And thank you so much to everyone who has already supported me. So there was a new newsletter, and it was pretty big. Now I'm not sure how long it will take me to make this video, because I didn't want to rush out a video on it where I just go, look at that, I wonder what that means. No, I want to do a meaningful analysis of it. So the first thing on the docket is the Sans interview. You know what, I don't want to talk about this yet. Let's skip it for now and come back to it at the end. Okay, next thing is a bunch of merch we don't care about. Skip it. Okay, now we're at the good stuff. So let's talk about the new screenshot from Chapter 3. The first point that's important to cover is the fact that the screenshot is titled Chapter 3 Intro Area. And that matters a lot because that means that this scene is happening at the start of the chapter. In fact, it's happening before Ralsei joins the party. And for the one guy who's going to leave a comment saying, I don't think Ralsei's going to be in Chapter 3, yes, he is. We know for a fact he's going to be in Chapter 3. But what's going on with this image? Where are they? And maybe a better question is, does it happen after the green room or before? Because this image appears to potentially contradict some of the other teases we have gotten for Chapter 3, specifically the green room and this sprite of Susie sleeping and then waking up. Because this sprite of Susie lines up perfectly to her sleeping on the couch. So then what gives? Is the green room the start, or is the intro in whatever this place is that looks nothing like the rest of the teasers for Chapter 3 the starting room? So after speculating and discussing it with my Discord server, I have come up with a few different theories on what might be going on with this image. So, first theory, we do start in the green room, but then we go into this room, which looks creepy at first, but after walking around a little bit, the lights will turn on and the creepy tentacles will be revealed to be wacky waving inflatable arm filling tube men. Basically, it's just a fake out. After the lights turn on, maybe we'll meet Tenna and he will tell us something, and then we go back and meet up with Ralsei, and then go on and do the rest of the Dark World. This one I feel is very possible, but I honestly don't really like it that much. I would be fine if it was true, but I think there are more interesting possible ideas. So now for the second theory. This one is a little complicated. So what if it's a dream? Like this is a playable dream sequence. So what I think might be happening here is that since Chris and Susie entered the Dark World sleeping, they are now having a dream in the Dark World. And that for some reason when you do that, it takes you to a darker Dark World, or something along those lines. And this is where they are right now, a darker Dark World, and we will walk around here for a bit until they wake up, and they will wake up in the green room. So let me explain some of the logic behind this thought. First off, darkness and dark worlds are already associated with dreams a lot. In the legend cutscene, darkness and dreams are connected to each other. Everyone thinks it was a dream after leaving them for the first time, and dreams are super important for Deltarune. Toby got the idea for the ending of the game from a dream, so the idea that something special might happen if you have a dream inside a dark world is really not that crazy of an idea. And Sham talks about how you won't want to be in a dark world when the sun goes down. What if this is what they're talking about? What if it's not a matter of being in the dark world at night, but sleeping in the dark world specifically? That does feel like a bit of a stretch though, because that's not really what they said. But there's also this line from Queen in the Snowgrave route. Let her close her eyes and sleep away into a darker, darker dream. But let's take a look at the image itself. They're standing on some kind of deck that is a little reminiscent of the cliffs area, and they're looking out into darkness with tentacles. What even are these supposed to be in the light world? I've seen people guess that they are the rug, and I think that is a reasonable guess. The thing is, this looks nothing like anything else we have seen so far for Chapter 3, so I don't think this is really in the normal Dark World. I think it would make sense for this to be some kind of darker Dark World, or something along those lines. So yeah, that's what I think is going on with this screenshot. Feel free to leave your thoughts about it in the comments. Okay, moving on to the Chapter 4 screenshot. So it's a picture of Noelle in the light world with a flashlight. Now the obvious first question to ask is, where is she? And the answer is most likely either her basement or her garage. We can clearly see large Christmas decorations behind her. These appear to be lawn decorations, so this must be where they store them. And I'm ruling out the attic because the floor looks like it's concrete. Now the next question is, why the flashlight? If this is in her house, why not just turn the lights on? Well, if this is in the garage, there's a good chance that it just doesn't have a light. But if this is her basement, there's a good chance that the lights are out for some reason. Maybe the rain has something to do with it. And if the lights did go out and this is her basement, then we could be looking for the fuse box to try and turn them back on. And there's a good chance that while we're down here, we'll run into something that gives us some death lore. But anyway, the big takeaway is that we are going to go to Noelle's house at some point during Chapter 4. Which makes sense, this is probably where the polite image is from. Now the question is, are we going to go here before or after the Dark World? And I will say probably after. I think that after the Dark World, everyone is going to decide to go hang out at Noelle's house for whatever reason. Though it is still possible that it could be before the Dark World, maybe after the events of Chapter 3, because someone broke into Toriel's house and stole her TV, that she sends Chris to go sleep over at Noelle's. But I have seen a lot of people say that this image confirms that the Dark World is going to be in Noelle's house, and I'm like, no, that's not how this works. Just because we know that we are going to be visiting a location doesn't mean that's where the Dark World will be. I mean, I didn't see any of you saying this when it was confirmed that Chris and Susie would be going to QC's in Chapter 4, so what changed? Like, let's take a step back here. The only thing we know about the Chapter 4's Dark World is that it will have a darkener made out of a red solo cup. So wherever the Dark World is, it has to be a place that would reasonably have these kinds of cups. So where could it be? Well, the last time I talked about this, I said it was at the church, because we know that they have fruit juice, and we know Susie is going to use a cup that is likely plastic to get fruit juice out of a big bowl. So it's a safe guess to say that this scene is from the church. But for the sake of discussion, where else could it possibly be? Well, this guy at Icy has a red cup, so maybe there. But it doesn't really make sense that they would have a punch bowl, though. So what if the bowl isn't from the church at all, and the Dark World is in Noelle's house? Let's say that Noelle decides to throw a house party for some reason, and this is where the solo cups and the juice bowl is used. And then for some reason, the knight decides to make a Dark World in the middle of the party or right after it ends. Where in the house would they even do that? Like, no matter who you think the knight is, this just feels like it would be a bad idea for them to do that. I don't know, but I think it would be a weird plan. I wouldn't write the story like this, especially since that would be two Dark Worlds back to back in a house. Even with different themes, I think that would be redundant and boring, especially when there are so many good locations to choose from and so few chapters. So yeah, even though it could be other places, I still think we are getting the Dark World in the church. Now before moving on, I want to address the other image we got for Chapter 4, which is the cup climbing up something. I'm not sure what to make of this, to be honest. The whole thing is a little odd. It's blue, it looks man-made, the lighting in the image is also odd. There's clearly a ray of light shining on it, and the bottom seems to be in shadow. And if you look very closely, you can see what appears to be dust particles near the top. So I think the cup is in either some kind of cave or dungeon, and is trying to climb out of it. Of course it keeps falling back down. Oh, so one more thing, I don't like how this GIF doesn't loop properly. It falls down and then jumps up because the GIF restarts. Anyway, I don't have too much to make of this. I still think we were doing Lord of the Hammer in the church. Okay, now for the Chapter 5 teaser. It's a balloon. I don't think this means much, to be honest. Like, this could really be anything. Like, there's gonna be a balloon in Chapter 5. Okay. Maybe it's from the festival, maybe it starts at Chapter 5 and goes on for multiple chapters. I think that would make sense. It could be from Icy's or maybe the hospital. But overall, I think it's not that important. I don't think there's much of a point in trying to theorize about it. Also, I didn't cover the text portion of these teasers because it's basically just, it's done, but we've still got the localization and console ports and bug testing, which is basically the same place we were at the last time. So if you want to hear more about my thoughts on that stuff, I did a whole podcast on the newsletter before this one, so you can go listen to that if you want. Which then leads us into the concept art and unused music. Now I'm not going to cover all of this, but I do want to talk about a few things that I found neat. Let's start off with the music. Of course, it's all very cool, but to me, nothing here tops the full, albeit unfinished, power of Neo. Like all the other songs shown off here are older versions of songs we did end up getting. And it's cool to hear them, but this is just something we straight up never got. That I didn't even think existed. So to get it, it's just super cool. And while I might say unfinished, it might as well just say unused because it is a full song. It doesn't even really need any changes in my opinion. And what Toby says here about it actually confirms some of my suspicions about how Toby wants to use Undertale in Deltarune. This is what he says. After creating Undertale, one of my goals for Deltarune was for players to finally be able to challenge a real version of Mettaton Neo that didn't just end in one turn. This to me really shows how I think Toby wants to handle Undertale characters and stuff being in Deltarune. That he added them in for fan service mostly, and specifically wants to use them to give us things we didn't get in Undertale, especially if it's something that was teased but never delivered. Mettaton Neo was teased, but we really didn't get it, but now in Deltarune we got Spampton Neo, giving us the super boss fight that we never got in a new context that still makes sense for this new game. And there's more stuff like this that we can already see. Everyone wanted to save Azrael, so in Deltarune he's alive and has a probably healthier relationship with their human step-sibling. We didn't get to see Toriel interact with most of the cast, so in Chapter 3 we get Toriel and Undying in the same Dark World. So with that in mind, what else could we see? Stuff that was teased in Undertale but never delivered. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is Gerson. In Undertale, Gerson has a lot of history and is a really important character in the lore. Undying says he fought in the Monster-Human War. When you talk to him, the pacifist epilogue, he says that he used to be part of the Royal Guard and implies he was the captain before Undying. He says he was known as the Hammer of Justice. So back in his youth, Gerson used to be a big shot. So for me, the idea of getting to see Gerson in his prime is some way would be awesome, and I know I'm not the only one with that sentiment. And I do think this is something on Toby's mind as well, because Gerson, despite being dead in Deltarune, is getting a weird amount of focus. The first Dark World is in his old classroom, and Toby decides to make him a Tolkien parody by having him write what is clearly a Lord of the Rings parody. Why do all of this if you're not going to pay it off at all? Especially the author thing, he didn't need to write a fantasy novel. His list of jobs was already more than long enough, with him being a blacksmith, an historian, and teacher. Toby did not need to add novelist to that list. But he did it anyway, and then put extra emphasis on that part specifically by having Alvin talk about it and having a copy of his book in the library. Pretty much everyone agrees that Alvin's dialogue is foreshadowing something, and most people think it's about him being the knight. And I would argue that that doesn't really make sense, but I don't really want to get into that right now. What I will say is that I think it would make way more sense if this is just foreshadowing Chapter 4 being about the Lord of the Hammer. And I think that this would be the perfect way to get Gerson in his prime into Deltarune. It does so in a way that makes sense with the new premise and can work well with the game's themes and ideas it wants to explore, namely identity. As the chapter boss would be the titular Lord of the Hammer, who I imagine would essentially be Gerson's self-insert. Basically, if he drew himself as the Chad, who I think is the perfect character to help Ralsei go through his character arc, as Ralsei is clearly struggling to figure out his identity. With both of them being a Darkener that is based on the idealized version of a Lightener, it would make sense that a lot could be done with this idea. Anyway, the point is we are totally going to be getting the Lord of the Hammer in Chapter 4. Now, as for the other unused songs, they are cool. I don't have much to say on them, for the most part. I think the ones we actually got in-game are better, but these are still very cool to see. I always love seeing behind-the-scenes stuff like this, things that were left on the cutting room floor. It helps gives us an idea of how we got to the end product that we actually see, and for me, the journey of how the game was made is just as important as the end product itself. Now, as for the concept art, most of the things I just said about the music also applies here. But I do think this really goes to show just how much things can change during development, and how we can go from the first ideas to the end product. I do want to talk about how Queen was going to be a lot more evil overall than what we actually got, which would explain why Jevil gassed her up back in Chapter 1. I also think this change was for the best overall. I know some don't agree, but I think if she was just like a king, then that would have been a bit boring. I think making her very different helps her stand out. I think it was the right call. Now moving on from that, on to one of my favorite things that we got in the newsletter, which is a letter from Azrael about Kara. Before the newsletter came out, I actually predicted that we would get Kara content in it because it was the 9th anniversary. Though it isn't exactly what I thought we would get, but I think this is much better than what I was expecting. Now, mostly this letter is really just cementing Kara's association with the number 9, which I personally really like. I think Toby and I are really on the same wavelength on this point. Specifically that being level 99 is just a power move, you know? It's so much cooler than the games that have a level cap be 100. Like, if you go to the triple digits, then I should be able to go to level 999. Now, originally I was going to use this letter as a jumping off point to talk about Kara and their character, and how this letter reinforces my interpretations of them. But I ultimately decided that I didn't want to go off on a big Kara tangent. It was just too much really, so I cut it. I'm only telling you this so you know why I didn't talk about this letter more, despite saying it was my favorite thing in the newsletter. But now that's the end of the letter. But I still have one more thing to talk about, the Sans interview from the beginning that I skipped. And I saved it for the end for one simple reason, because this is clearly Toby making fun of fandom theorists. And if you try to read this as a metaphor for how people discuss and debate Deltarune theories, then it becomes a lot more funny. Like, let me walk you through this. Sans tells Papyrus that 7, 8, 9, and he responds by saying that he refuses to believe this because it would go against his interpretation of 7's character. He then comes up with a convoluted counter-theory where he shifts the blame from 7 to 5. And then because of this, the discussion devolves into even more insane theories. Until we reach the peak, Papyrus Night. I could try and theorize about how this is actually giving us all the secrets in the game, and is also covering how people have been talking about them, but that feels like a fool's errand. But yeah, Toby is making fun of us. Well, not me of course, all my theories are 100% right. He's mostly just making fun of the rest of you guys. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe. If you really loved the video, you can support me over on Ko-Fi. Doing so will get you a special role in my Discord server. And also, if you want to chat with me directly, you can join my Discord server. It's completely free. You can join and chat with me and like-minded theorists, or you can just sit and lurk. That's fine too. Now, as for the future of the channel and stuff, we are getting closer to the release of Deltarune, and as such, I think I have at least time to make one more big Deltarune theory video. This is because I want to, 1, diversify my content a bit more, mostly just doing more live streams. I've already done a neutral playthrough of Undertale Yellow, and I'm planning on doing the True Pacifist playthrough very soon. But on top of that, I also want to cover the pre-release hype for Deltarune, you know, like the newsletters and stuff. When the closer we get to release, you know, the more stuff we're going to be seeing. We're going to be getting trailers, we're going to be getting more newsletters more often, bigger updates, more stuff to talk about. So a lot of the time spent towards release up and from now is probably going to be covering a lot of that stuff, like this video was. So while I only plan on making one more big Deltarune theory video, I'm still going to be covering Deltarune content and Deltarune theories and stuff with the pre-release content and talking about that stuff. So yeah, that's it for this video. See you all soon.